Recording is on.
All right. Good afternoon, everybody, to the Easy Happy Hour. This one may be a bit more chaotic than usual, but we'll see. So just as a reminder for the people who don't know, Easy Happy Hours are open meetings that anyone can join. And you can find more information here in the Easy documentation on this. For today's topic, it will be a short report on the activities that we have had on ISC, the ISC conference last week. And this will be the last happy hour, at least for now, as we hit into summer. And we're going to check after summer if we'll continue this series. So I've prepared a couple of slides here quickly on ISC. It's mostly pictures, but just to drive the conversation a bit. So ISC conference last year in Hamburg is a big international event focused on supercomputing. It had about 4,000 attendees in total, so it is not small for sure. And we had several things that were part of the official program, so that we submitted now a long time ago, and that were accepted. A big part of that was the Easy tutorial on Monday, where we finally got a tutorial on Easy, not Easy Build, as we have done in the past, accepted. So an introductory level, a half-day tutorial for 3.5 hours. There was a coffee break in between as well. Mostly introductory level. But yeah, quite interesting. We saw a lot of new faces there, I think, that we haven't really seen in other Easy sessions yet. So that's quite good. You can also see the SPAC team there at the back, spying on us, just like we were spying on them in the morning in their own tutorial. So it's interesting to see them also keeping an eye on what we are doing and the other way around. So we had about 20 attendees, which is pretty okay for an ISC tutorial, I would say. We saw other tutorials that had far fewer attendees and some, more, let's say, separate ones that were bigger on LLMs, for example. That session was quite full on agents, AI agents. All the materials that we have used are available here on the separate web page, ISC'26-tutorial. So the slides that we were using, and also detailed information on the prepared environment, which now no longer exists, I think, but also the hands-on that attendees were invited to follow, like on using Easy, like on installing software on top of Easy with both build-env and Easy extend. So these are step-by-step instructions on how to do these things. And likewise for using Easy and SCI environment. So all of that is public. So it was essentially a paid tutorial. You had to pay to attend it. But all the material is available for free online. Then we had more things, mostly in between, I would say, or at the ISC exhibit. So we visited lots of booths, talked to lots of people who were either already very aware of Easy or maybe not yet to the extent that we think they should be. Especially with Open On Demand, we had a very good discussion on how Easy can be used as a backend for Open On Demand interactive apps and how we could make that, let's say, official. So having official integration for Easy in Open On Demand in some shape or form. There were some very good discussions on that. With the Open On Demand team, and actually very in-depth discussions with one of the technical people who was developing Open On Demand as well. So let's see what comes out of it, but I think it's very interesting. Discussions with AMD as well. We even heard that some sites are, to some extent, waiting or at least looking what Easy is doing with AMD ROCm before they will seriously consider buying AMD GPUs. And we passed on the word on that to AMD itself as well. Let's see if that results in anything concrete in the coming weeks or months. But we definitely made some noise on that left and right. Of course, with Euro HPC-JU, we had discussions on Easy itself and on related projects. And then lots of HPC sites, too many to name, but also developers of scientific software and researchers who were in some of our sessions. Afterwards came to us and said they really liked the general idea of Easy and are interested to look into it. including some big applications that are included in your HPC projects as well. Also on the side, I was invited to join a podcast interview or to do a podcast interview on EESSI. Pretty high level, how it came to be and why it's actually happening and what it does concretely. So it was about a 45-minute discussion that they're going to cut out interesting parts and then hopefully make something flashy that will probably go on YouTube at some point. This is an entirely new podcast, but we knew the person doing it already quite well. So we'll see. I think he said sometime in summer that he expects to publish the first episode on that. Then more part of the official program, we had an easy birds of a feather session that we proposed ourselves, but we were also actively involved in two other sessions. One on the Euro HPC Federation platform, which I helped co-organize. And Alan was also invited to join another Birds of a Feather session on interoperable AI infrastructure across access portals across Europe. So that's on the top right picture. The top left one is the Federation platform that had about 200 people in that Birds of a Feather session, where at least it was very clearly mentioned that EESSI is the backend for the federated software catalog in there. And then there were some questions related to this as well. And then in our own BOF session, so that's the rightmost bottom two pictures, we had about 100 attendees in the end, I think. So that was on Thursday morning. The timing for that was a bit unfortunate, the first session of the day after a long week already. But we had a pretty good attendance. We had poll questions prepared that were shared with the attendees in the hope that would trigger discussion. But in the end, there was actually no real need for that, as questions were coming in quite naturally from attendees. We did trigger them a bit, so we promised everybody who would ask a question to get an easy coffee mug for free, and that definitely helped in making people less shy or more keen on asking a question. So that was very helpful. But the BOF, we walked through the whole BOF as well, and I can actually show the results of that BOF maybe quickly here as well. I'll do that at the end. And then the last day on Friday, there were workshops. Also there we had two people. So Lara and Helena gave a presentation on EESSI itself and two different workshops. So the bottom two pictures are from Helena's 45-minute presentation. I think it was 45 minutes in one of the workshops, where she essentially did an introduction to EESSI again, along with a hands-on demo that was very well, that worked out very well, and that really helped a lot, again, to make people realize what we're doing. We also did the live demo during the tutorial, of course, and even also during the EFP BOF and the EESSI BOF, we also did a quick live demo. So that keeps helping to make people understand why EESSI is interesting. On the bottom left is Lara presenting EESSI in a workshop that had fewer attendees, but where most people were still very interested. So it was definitely not a wasted effort to also have a talk there. And what was a little bit of a surprise is that we also saw EESSI popping up in other talks that we, mostly for people that already had talked with before or had done some work with before. The bottom right, for example, is somebody from the eBrains project talking in the containers workshop, how they're dealing with their challenges of getting their software on all the systems. These people were also in a workshop, a hackathon in Bologna that Lara, Alan, and I organized at ISC'26 in Italy. And since then, it looks like they have kept working on this in the last couple of weeks and are starting to work towards something where they build their own software on top of what EESSI provides. So software that they sometimes cannot redistribute, but have to keep to themselves. And they're now actively looking into EESSI as their way to make sure they can easily install the software they need on any system they are playing on. So other examples of places where EESSI were mentioned in talks that we didn't know to ourselves. So it was mentioned in the Jupyter presentation at the Euro HPC BOF. as being part of the federation platform, and it was called out explicitly on that. And also during the EFP boot presentation itself, it's not on the slide here, but EESSI was also covered in a couple of slides in there. So even at the exhibit, we got some exposure as well. And then also here, sometimes EESSI build is being mentioned in talks, just to compare. Jupe is a testing tool, a bit like Reframe. So they are using it as a comparison for other things. In the RISC-V buff, we popped up in some of the live polls that were being done. So what would it take to convince you to run RISC-V for HPC? And somebody answered if it was properly supported in EESSI. So that's interesting. And also here in the SPAC buff, they were doing a live poll. Also here, using SPAC on top of EESSI popped up as one of the answers. So left and right were also being mentioned in other sessions. Yeah, I'm writing up a blog post on all of this with more details, more pictures, and a bit of background for the people who are not attending the sessions, especially, and also pointers to recordings or any presentations, any slides that we have. I'll share those soon. Maybe we can quickly take a look at, and I have to check if I can find it. Let's see, ISC buff. Yeah, so in here, these are the slides that we used for the Birds of a Feather session that we had there. And at the end, they have the results available from the poll. So maybe you can quickly take a look at those because that was quite interesting. We had about, I think 60 something, yeah, about 60 or 70 people joining the live poll during the BOF. And for this particular question and many other questions, they were able to provide more than one answer. So this is interesting that we at least had 16 people already using EESSI for installing scientific software. A bit of a 50-50 between EESSI build and SPAC. And also lots of people still using containers and tools like Conda or even other things. And I guess UV or any of these Python installation tools should have been one of the answers as well. Maybe manual installations as well. So there's something else bucket here. There was no room for attendees to provide specific answers on that. And we also didn't ask because questions kept coming in, so we didn't have time to really dive into the details of the poll, but it's nevertheless still interesting. Which platforms people are using is mostly classic HPC clusters, but also their own personal laptops, and then to a lot lesser extent cloud environments. Some people playing with Raspberry Pis or something else, and again here we don't know what something else is. So I wouldn't say this is an unexpected result here. Not too many people playing in the cloud, but definitely some. Which hardware people are using to, or which hardware platforms people are managing or using. So also here we had a split, and you'll probably see the usual suspects here. Mostly NVIDIA's GPUs, some AMD GPUs, either combined with AMD or Intel CPUs. Also quite a lot of ARM CPUs with NVIDIA GPUs. So this is probably Grace Hopper systems here. Oh, whoops. Quite a bunch also CPU only, actually. So about half the people joining the poll still had CPU only systems. And only a handful are playing with RISC-V. So again, nothing too surprising here. Essentially the ecosystem as we see it ourselves as well. How many software packages do people have installed? A broad mix from just a handful to over 1,000 and everything in between. So this is also not too surprising. It's all over the place depending on the size of the system that people are using or running on. How much time does it take you to install scientific software? It sucks up quite a bit of time for a relatively small, say a third of the people. And 5 people here already said they were using EESSI today. So in that sense, if the software that they need is there, it is quite quick. But the majority said they're using good tooling, and which is not that bad, usually hours to get something installed. But of course, with EESSI, it's a lot faster. And then we asked the same question essentially, but for a specific software package, just to see if that would change anything. The big part is still using tools like EasyBuild or Spec. One single person is happy to use a random container that you don't even know what's in there. And then about 5, so more or less the same 5 as we had here, are using Easy if they need any GrowMax. And some people just don't know what GrowMax is. So we also try to put some humor in these answers here to try and get people to trigger to react to it. But in the end, we didn't really need to wake people up. They were happy to ask good questions. We also asked about testing. So most people only do quite basic tests, nothing too extensive. And quite a significant amount are running a test suite and then at least trying to fix the test, but some are also just flat out ignoring that. So I don't think most people are testing to the extent that we are. And that's also why the question was put in there. I thought there were 2 questions here. This is just a different view. Do you know if the software installations you're using have been tested? So this one was about, are you testing it yourself? The next one is about, do you know if the software you are using has been tested by anyone? And quite a bit of people are quite unsure about that, as you may expect. Is Easy already available on the systems you are using or managing? A small minority said yes on all of them. Others said yes on some or most of them. But quite a bunch, let's say about a third of the people still active in the poll, say it is not there yet, but they should look into that. So it looks like they were interested in, based on what they learned throughout the session. And then, yeah, overall, we got a pretty good score in the end for the BOF. Also, the slides for the BOF will be linked from the blog post at least. But there's very little stuff in here that you haven't seen yet. So it's all the usual stuff that you've seen before. So relatively high level overview of where Easy is and how it works. Yeah, so that was more or less it. And the blog post will have more details. I don't know if anyone here has any questions on particular things that you may have heard or about what was happening at ISC.
Maybe I can ask a question here. So
Sure.
this is the compared to last year's interaction with the users and attendees, did you find that it was more than what happened last year, or some of the audience waited for some new ideas, new topics?
We didn't go to ISC last year, at least. Lara, correct me if I'm wrong. It was 2024 when we last time had a BOF, right? Yeah. So last year we didn't do anything. I would say there was increased interest, at least, and seeing it mentioned in several other talks is also, I think, a very good sign. So, like the eBrains people were clearly actively playing with it, trying things out, seeing how well it works for their use case. Also, like I mentioned, those live demos that we did are clearly very helpful to make people understand, first of all, what we're doing, and second of all, why it could be interesting for them. So a very concrete example is the somebody doing a presentation on Sisal, which is a big earthquake simulation software package, where one of the things they mentioned in their talk is that it's a bit of a nightmare to get installed. And afterwards, informally, they also told us that they're sometimes even not applying for your HPC resources because it's quite a pain for them to get it installed properly, get it working properly. They were in one of our easy sessions, and yeah, it was very clear immediately to them that this will be a huge help to get this supported. There is an older version of Sisal already supported in Easy Build. There is an existing Easy config for it. So in that sense, it's relatively low-hanging fruit to look into this. And they even sent us, me and Lara, an email afterwards to say that this was a very interesting topic, and they're keen on exploring this further. So yeah, I would say there's to me, a notable increase in interest. Before, it was mostly us talking about it and trying to get people interested. But now we had I was at least in 5 sessions where I didn't expect it to see pop up or expect it to see mentioned explicitly. And that happened without us being actively involved, anyone from the core team. So to me, that's a very good sign. So the word is spreading, I think, and the more people will talk to each other about this, the better it will be for you. Okay, yeah. So I would say keep an eye out for that blog post. I'm hoping to finish it in the next couple of days. You've heard quite a lot of spoilers here, but yeah, all these pictures will probably reuse and provide a bit of context on them so you can get a better feeling.
Mhm. I found this information regarding people waiting to buy AMD GPU machines until
Yeah,
it's available or supported by EASY. That I found interesting.
yeah. So do I. I mean, this is hearsay.
Yeah.
We don't know who said this, so I didn't hear this myself, but you heard it from somebody else who heard it from at least, I think they mentioned 3 different sites who were saying this. And then we also confronted AMD with this because they had a booth there, and they were listening
Yeah.
when we talked. I think to some extent it maybe not so much that they are going to rely on Easy fully to provide the full software stack, but it's more of a sign of maturity. If we can
Mhm.
do it in Easy, and I mean they know that we are doing it out in the open, that gives them more confidence that the whole thing is properly
Yeah.
supported and
Yeah.
properly working. I'm
Yeah, I
hoping this
could.
wakes up AMD as well. That maybe should collaborate with
Yeah.
person.
I think maybe it just gives potential customers confidence that it could work.
Yes, that they have a way to relatively easily get things working
Mm.
without maybe being forced to use custom tooling like the Rock,
Mm.
which is essentially a package manager for Rockum, if I understand it correctly. That's maybe not the most attractive option for many people. If they can use a more standard solution like Easy that they can also use for other things,
Mm.
maybe that's to them. Or maybe it's just a sign of maturity that Rockum is
Mm.
now stable in the
Yeah.
last couple. Yeah.
Could it be interesting for us, maybe to know someone from AMD or maybe a vendor who offers AMD GPUs so that they have some test systems available where Easy actually is pre-configured and so that the user who says, okay, I would like to try this,
Mm.
or potential customers go and
We
then test it on the system.
Yeah, we have some contacts at EMD already that are at least happy to answer questions that we have. We discussed remote access to remote systems within Europe as well, and it looks like there are some potential ones for in Germany at least that may be open to that. We didn't go as far as proposing helping out with setting up a system where Easy is available, so people can play with that on AMD GPUs. But that's actually a nice idea. Maybe we can concretely propose that, or find a site who's willing to set it up, where they are also giving people access to it to play with things. That may be interesting. So they can at least evaluate and give feedback or see how well it's working on if Easy is available on the system. That's a good idea. We should propose that to the AMD contacts that we have and see if they're keen on doing this.
Mm.
Because
What was? Mhm. Go
Yeah,
ahead.
I was going to say with all the work that Ayush has done at SURF for his master thesis,
Mm.
which was covered in the happy hour 2 weeks ago, things have progressed quite a lot, and we're getting very close to having a Romax installation on top of Rockham included in Easy itself. So once we get to that point, we'll definitely make some noise about it in the blog post, and that could maybe be a good time to step to AMD again and say, look, we have something very concrete now that you can also test and that you probably know how to use it because most people know how to evaluate Gromax a bit on their capable HPC hardware. So yeah, maybe that's a good, we'll reach out to them again.
Mhm. Was there? So I mean, I was wondering a bit about sort of the how it works with RISC-V. What do people think about it? Is it an interesting, promising platform, or maybe still too early to really bet more on this?
You mean specifically easy on RISC-V or just
No,
RISC-V?
more general, more general. I mean, of course, if it would be, I mean, okay, we have software working with
Yeah,
RISC-V, yeah, right? So I don't want to say we are ahead, but let's say we are good positioned, I would say.
yeah.
And but of course, if no one really considers this as a platform where they build a cluster with, I don't know how many cores in the next, I don't know, 3, 5 years, then yeah,
Yeah.
it's maybe good to do this, but yeah, we don't know what it will be in the end.
The RISC-V BOF session was quite interesting. There were at least three companies that were announcing that they were going to have very capable RISC-V CPUs quite soon. I think they say 2, 3 years from now. Next Silicon is one of them. They were mostly doing accelerators until now, these Maverick accelerators. They are now also working on the RISC-V CPU. Then there's I think Rhea is Cyperl is one of their future chips. The plan is also there to go with RISC-V in the end, but that's probably longer than 3 years, I would say, as a timeline. And there was one or two others that I now forget from the top of my head. But if you look up the slides from the RISC-V BOF, you should be able to see how that was. So it looks like this is definitely ramping up, becoming more interesting, and with very capable hardware coming quite soon, 2, 3 years from now. There was a question as well in the interactive poll during the RISC-V workshop that was asking how realistic is that we will have a RISC-V, fully RISC-V based, so CPU, GPU accelerators in RISC-V in the top 500 in the next 5 years. I don't remember the detail, but I think I recall 50 or 60% or more than that saying that that's very likely to happen. So that's a very large scale system, a top 500 system, fully RISC-V based within the next 5 years. Of course, maybe there's probably a bit of bias there because the people coming to the RISC-V both are very interested in RISC-V and are to some extent want it to happen as well. But it doesn't look like a crazy assessment to me. How quickly we see things developing and how many companies we see jumping on it and working on very capable RISC-V hardware. I don't think it's impossible that we'll have something very interesting in the next couple of years. And you're right. I mean, right now it's also for us still early days with RISC-V. We've mostly looked at the generic CPU target. We're now also looking at the vector-based CPU targets for RISC-V, early steps in that. But it's possible that we will have the software by the time the hardware is there. Yeah, so that makes us, I think, quite interesting. I don't think many people in the RISC-V ecosystem now even know that we exist. So we'll have to keep making noise about this, what we are doing with RISC-V, and maybe trying to get ourselves into these workshops or BOF sessions. Once we have something that's a really good result on RISC-V. I don't think we are there yet, but we're definitely heading there. But does it help, Thomas? Was that what you're looking for in terms of answer?
Sure. No, no, no. And maybe one question more from me. Do you think it's a good place to get in contact with users?
I think so. Yeah. I mean, it's typically the more, let's say, advanced users, the people doing very big compute that are coming to ISC, who either have presentations themselves there or maybe even have papers with very concrete research results. It's not a very broad audience in terms of end users, but there's definitely people there that have problems that we can fix with easy. Sisal is a very good example. I think Parflow was another one in the workshop that Lara was in, which definitely see and understand these challenges and are interested in what we have come up with and how it can help them. So there's definitely room to do some promotion work, let's say, there on easy. But of course, it's a very small part of the actual community of scientific researchers doing compute.
Okay.
I definitely like it as an event. I mean, I wasn't bored for it even a single minute throughout the whole week. There was always interesting sessions to go to talk to, people that came to us in the hallways as well after they were in one of our sessions. So yeah, I think it's very nice to go there. And try again, definitely next year to have again, at the very least, a BOF session, maybe also a tutorial again. I mean, the attendance is not spectacular, but the people who are there were generally interested, and yeah, let's say 80% of them was actually paying full attention, and really trying the hands-on parts as well. So it's a lot of work to prepare this, but once we have one, it's yeah significantly less work to prepare and propose a second one. And if already having one and that's pretty well attended also helps, I think, building confidence that you can do it again and that you have a high chance of getting accepted. So we'll definitely try again and see. And through all the federation platform and all these things, that definitely helps in attracting attention. Okay, any other questions before we wrap up the recorded part? Richard, what do you think? Should we?
If there are no additional questions, just before we wrap up, keep in mind the Euro HPC Users Days. That's between 22nd and 24th of September in Dublin, Ireland. The registration is still not open, but since this is our last session before the summer break, so keep an eye. We also will be available during those sessions, right, Kenneth?
Yeah, yeah. So through the federation platform, we'll definitely make some noise about it. There, we'll also have a poster with multi-X scale that again has a table and some kind of demo booth with a screen where we can do a quick live demo of EESSI for people who are interested and again attract some attention. Probably with battery stickers and maybe also with a Raspberry Pi clusters that will have their flashing lights to attract people's attention.
And it's planned to have a hackathon after the user
Yes.
days?
Yeah,
Okay.
indeed. The user days runs Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. I think Thursday only until noon. And we are trying to get confirmation on having a hackathon on Friday in Dublin, probably in Trinity College, so one of the universities there. So it's not going to be the exact same venue, but it's going to be very closely, let's say, connected to the EuroHPC User Day. So not part of the official program, but at least in the same city the day right after. Yeah. So as soon as we have full confirmation on that, it hasn't happened yet. We'll let people know in Slack, the mailing list, and on our social media as well.
Do you know if it's expected that this event will be a bit larger because the summit was cancelled?
Yeah, it is indeed. So some sessions that were planned already for the summit are essentially moved to this. The user days are usually only a day and a half. They're now 2 days and a half. So they're sort of doing a mix between what the summit was going to be and what the user day was already planned to be in September. So it is indeed a bit of a mix of topics. Like there's a panel session here about the exascale supercomputers, for example, which was scheduled for the summit and which was now essentially moved into the user days. So it's going to be a little bit of a different agenda compared to previous events, previous user days, but I think still interesting and probably very well attended. We'll see. Yeah, that will be the next thing we'll be heading towards and trying to get in touch with the broader community.
Then with that, I will stop the recording.